Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This video is entitled How Astral Projection Changes You. Before I get into it, just want to mention that if you are interested in supporting Astral Club on Patreon, you'll get advanced videos without commercials, and there's a link we can talk back and forth. If you're interested in personal astral projection lessons with me, there will be information in the description along with a link to Patreon as well. Recently, during one of my I've been having a great time with these astral private lessons, and I've met such extraordinary people that I feel privileged to being able to take part in this process, and I like to think that I've been able to help them, and at the same time, I think they're helping me as well. One of the things that came to my attention was that I've talked a lot about how to astral project, where you can astral project. You can astral project in dimensional spaces, time, outer space. You can talk with entities like guides or nature spirits, or you can talk with the lower astral denizens if that's something that you're interested in. You can speak with angel guides. There's so much that you can do, and I've talked about a lot of it. One thing I haven't talked about, maybe because it hits a little close to my emotional core, is how astral projection has changed me personally. What it has done to alter my perception of the world, my perception of who I am in the world, who I am outside the world, who I am when I'm no longer in this body. There's a lot of very profound realizations that I've had over the years, and I'd like to share some of them with you. And the purpose of this, I hope, is that you will realize for yourself the value of astral projection. And it's so much more precious than just space exploration or meeting a different race of people or speaking with some astral sage master or visiting the Akashic records, or talking with a shy nature spirit, or exploring the depths of the ocean. Or if you're the type of person who likes to go deep in the earth, that's not my thing, but you can do that. So all these are great things, but that's doesn't really change your core being. It just pours more information into you. Let me give you some examples of how my astral projections have deeply changed everything about me. Recently, someone asked me, what was your favorite astral projection? Now, I had one come to mind immediately. And if you've been watching this channel for a long time, you might think, oh, maybe Rick's going to talk about his trip to Amphibia, or maybe he's going to talk about, his interactions with Astral Guide School, or maybe he's going to talk about that time he went back in the past and was able to share consciousness with a giant crocodilian creature, or maybe that megalodon. No. Those are all interesting moments, and they certainly giving me a wider idea as to what's possible. But the one thing that changed me the most was when I asked to see our galaxy from the outside looking in. Now, we have artistic visions of what this would look like, but we have no, as a race, actual pictures of our galaxy from the outside looking in. And when I appeared thousands of light years away from our galaxy in this inky blackness, as alone, as solitary as any human has ever been in the history of humanity. Even someone left on a desert island has a hope that a ship might sail by and that rescue and company might occur. I knew there was no such chance for me. So I felt that solitariness. I started thinking, what am I, not only outside of my body, but what am I apart from my planet? What am I apart from my race? I'm a soul, I'm an intelligence, but what else am I? I'm so used to identifying myself with, well, I'm a male, I'm a U.S. citizen, I do this, I do that. But now I'm thousands of light years away and looking at this beautiful, breathtaking, if I had breath, spiral galaxy, alone itself, isolated in this huge blackness, this desert of nothingness. And I thought to myself, somewhere that I can't even see is a teeny little dot of light in one of those spiral arms. And that dot is our sun. And some little microbe circling that sun, the third planet from that sun, is Earth, my home, where everyone I have ever known is located, where my frame of reference is located. And this experience today, as I'm sharing this with you, gives me chills. I started thinking, what if I was in a spacecraft and I was here, thousands of light years away, and I wanted company? Would I care if the person, the human who accompanied me was Chinese or Russian, Slovakian, Canadian, Mexican, U.S. citizen? Would I care? No, I wouldn't. Because that person, that human, I would have infinitely more in common to share and to have conversations and to share memories with, infinitely more than I would have with any other being that I've ever met or that I might meet somewhere out there in that vast distance, that vast empty ocean that we call interstellar space. And when I returned to my body, I felt changed, profoundly changed. I felt like somebody who had attended some religious service in an ancient temple by himself and felt the touch of his God. That's how I felt at the moment I returned. And to this day, that memory stays with me. And when someone asks me, what's your favorite experience? That's the one that immediately comes to mind. Now, not every change is as profound as that one. I have shared the bodies briefly of some animals. I talked about the giant crocodilian back in 75 million years ago, where I had a side effect for a few weeks that I was attracted to the smell of rotten meat, for instance. And I've shared the bodies of a giant megalodon and some other creatures like a jaguar type creature in the future. And I think I left a little with them and I brought a little back from them. It gave me an understanding a little bit more of what it's like to be those creatures, to give me a little bit of a different viewpoint. For instance, do you realize how hard it is to walk or run with four legs? Let me tell you, it's hard. When I jumped into the body of that, let's call it leopard jaguar type creature in the future, not sure, it was running, which was a bad idea at the time because it immediately went head over heels when I took over control. It's difficult to maneuver when you've got four limbs. I was only there for a few minutes, and eventually I got to a point where I could move my front two and then drag my last two, and I looked like I was injured, I'm sure. But it gave me a brief idea of what it was like to be this creature and how elegant it must be able to maneuver in its environment and use these four limbs to such an extent that it was able to run without thinking at such high rates of speed. Of course, there's other experiences that definitely affected me as deeply as the galaxy experience did. I wanted to see what our future would be. Now, I jumped into the future before, but never as far as I did one day when I decided I was going to go all the way to the end of the earth. And I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. My first jump was 500 million years. I spent days wandering along a beach. Didn't see, all I saw was a couple of washed up dead jelly type things. And then I eventually stumbled on some moss or fungus. And it just seemed so precious to me that there was life because I didn't see any life on the land. I assumed there must have been some life in the ocean, but I didn't. All I saw was these dead jelly type creatures. There certainly were no humans, and I flew for quite a bit, and I saw no evidence of any human habitation, and indeed no evidence that humans had ever existed on this planet. And I know it was difficult for me to accept, and I'm sure it's difficult for some of you. As a human, we have this arrogance that somehow we're always going to be here. But think about it. If you trace back our direct lineage, we don't go back more than a couple 100,000 years in our current body. Now you can go back a number of millions of years and you can get to simpler forms until you get eventually to a point 10 million or so years ago where you're dealing with something that is a lot closer to a chimp than, say, us. When you talk about civilization, when you're talking about cities, well, history goes back 6, 7, maybe 8,000 years. And there's some theories saying that, oh, it goes back further than that. But we're talking 500 million years into the future. 500 million years ago in the past, the Earth was just starting to get an ozone layer. It was just starting to get enough oxygen to actually allow creatures on the land. Think about that. Now I'm talking about 500 million years into the future. Is there really any surprise that I don't see any trace of human habitation. But still, it affected me because it was hard for me to accept. And I was there for many days and I went through a lot of emotions. At first, I wondered whether I'd ever be able to get back because I wasn't getting my return signal. I'd gone so far into the future that I couldn't detect my return signal. I wondered if I'd ever be able to get back or if I'd be alone for the rest of eternity. I decided eventually that I was going to accomplish my task that I came here for. So instead of trying to go back, I went forward. I went to 1 billion years. Somewhere in that process, I ended up hitting some sort of an ice age. I think an asteroid of some sort impacted the Earth. Something huge happened, and it just caused an enormous ice age over the entire planet. I explored that a little bit, but it was just one big ice world. So after a little bit of exploration for a few days, I mean, it was beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I decided I wanted to continue. And when I got to 1 billion years, the oceans were gone, and I didn't detect any life at all on the planet. And so I thought to myself, here I am, the last human. Who am I now, separate from my species? My planet is dead. My race has to be dead. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, maybe we went to the stars. Okay, let's say we did. What type of human would be left with 1 billion years more of evolution on an alien planet? Think about that for a second. That being, assuming it still existed and had its ancient ancestor in humanity, would have about as much in common with me as I do with an amoeba. So, for all practical purposes, my race was extinct. So, I was alone, about as alone as you can possibly get on a dead world. All I could do at that point was to continue to progress to the point where the sun became angry and red, and it went through its little convulsions till eventually it just expanded and it just tore apart and burned the earth to a cinder. And then and there I was, hovering in space in the shattered remains of my planet. I felt as alone as anyone could feel. I felt separate, I felt apart, but I also felt complete, like it was important for someone to be there at the end. The earth had given us so much, had given life so much. It just seemed to me that some intelligence should be there when it was its turn to die. Luckily, finally, I got my return call. And when I returned to my body, I felt like a new man. I went to my bathroom window and threw open the bathroom window and just inhaled the air. It had just stopped raining, and I could smell the freshened air, the scent of moisture. I could hear the birds starting to chirp, and I could smell the leaves from the trees. For the first time in a long time, I had appreciation for the miracle that is life, for the fragility of this life, for the knowledge that it is precious. And it's precious for the very reason that it won't be here forever. and that this beauty will fade and will die and will vanish. So it must be appreciated while it's here. All your petty troubles, all my petty troubles, will soon fade away. Think back to when you were a kid. There probably was a test of the week or a final exam or something that you were so afraid of taking and that you were so consumed with fear. Oh, if I fail this test or that test, horrible things are going to happen. And now here you are as an adult. I'll bet you that you probably can't even recall what that important test was, or what it was about, or what the stakes were, because it's unimportant. It seemed important to you at the time. But now, with your adult view, you can see it wasn't important. And I assure you, your current worries are not anywhere near as important as you think they are. I'm not saying abandon all of your responsibilities. No. I'm saying put them in their place. Realize that 100, 1,000, 1,000,000,000 years from now, no one will remember them or place any importance in them. So with that knowledge, realize that it's really not that bad. It just isn't. Lastly, I want to share what I consider the obvious, but one of the greatest fears that mankind has had since we became self-aware was the fear of death. A fear that we will discontinue, that our lifetime will be cut short at some point, that we will become extinct in a personal way. And when the average human thinks about that, the ego rebels at that thought process. It cannot conceive of a reality whereby it will disappear and no longer be aware and be in existence. Astral projection allows you a privilege that the vast majority of mankind is not afforded. And that is the ability to realize that you are not your physical body. Your physical body will age, it will become infirm, and it will gradually reach a state where it can no longer continue. It can no longer support your physical life. But with astral projection, you realize that your physical body is not you. Your physical body is merely a vehicle, a car. Now, what happens when you buy a new car? Oh, you love it. It's beautiful. You keep it shiny and new, and it's just wonderful. It gets you around. You feel like, oh, you just love this thing, and you just feel attached to it, especially if you're a young man with a brand new sports car or something. But eventually, it grows old. You put a lot of miles on it, and it just doesn't work like it used to work anymore. So eventually, you discard it. You leave it behind, and you go on. Because in the end of the day, it's just a vehicle. It worked for a period of time. It got you where you wanted to go, but now it's no longer of any use. And you leave it behind because the real you is not the vehicle. The real you is an eternal soul, which will continue to go on, will continue to learn, will continue to grow, will continue to experience everything that the universe has to offer. These are some of the things that have changed me, that I have learned in astral projection. I know they're not as interesting, perhaps, or as action packed as some of the experiences that I've had, but I assure you that these experiences are extremely long lasting. They changed, and they have changed who I am. And as you begin and continue to astral project, they will change you as well. If you like this video, why don't you hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, and any questions, any words of wisdom, I'd very much be interested in what you have to say. If astral projections have affected you in a certain way, I'd love to hear it. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link to Patreon in the description. And if you'd like private lessons in astral projection, there will be an email in the description where you can contact me and I'll supply you with the needed information. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.